worked. All right. I think after I tune this thing, we'll be ready to go. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is good to look up and see you all now that my head's screwed on right. And it is good to be here this evening to celebrate the bringing in of Shabbat. I'm certainly ready for this. And also, this weekend is the holiday of Shavuot, which is the celebration traditionally of Zman Matan Toratenu, the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And so I'll say a little bit more about that later. But I just hope that our time together this evening is one that brings us a warm sense of community and peace, and that we all bring in the Shabbat in a pleasant way together. We, just as always, have our slideshow on the screen in front of you, or if you want, the prayer books in the pews around you. There should be a prayer book around you. I'll announce page numbers. On Zoom, you please feel free to use the slides. And just a note about cues, I'll be inviting people to rise or please be seated. And when I do, I want to acknowledge that I'm saying inviting you to rise either in body or in spirit as you are comfortable. So with that, we are going to begin on page 126. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to help work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. We'll continue with Hine Matov, how good it is for all of us to be together.
Umanayim
continue singing together on page 130 with the words of Psalm 95 and 96, Lechu Neranena, giving thanks to God for the beauty and the gifts of creation. Lechu Neranena, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Ladonai, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Naria, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Letzor Yisheinu, Yai Lai 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 Lai. Let us sing out to God, maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu Neranena, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Ladonai, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Naria, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Letzor Yisheinu, Yai Lai 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 Lai. For all of the wonder and all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu Neranena, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Ladonai, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Naria, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Letzor Yisheinu, Yai Lai 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 Lai, Yai Lai 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 Lai. We'll continue on page 138 as we join together in singing the medieval poem Lachado D. We'll join together in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and as we reach the final verse, we'll stand to face the entryway to welcome Shabbat like a bride or a queen. Lachado D on page 138. Ya la 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 Lachado D, Ya la 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 Likrat Kala, Ya la 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 B'nai Shabbat Nekabela, Shamor V'Zachor V'Dibor Echad, Ish B'Yanu one more song of welcome, Shalom Aleichem, as we welcome the Shabbat angels, the ministering angels of peace, to join us here and bring us that sense of Shabbat restfulness that I know I am certainly looking for right now. Shalom Aleichem, page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Roachem L'Shalom Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Baruchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon, melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Shalom aleichem, shalom aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shuvchem l'shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We'll continue with the kindling of the Shabbat lights on page 120. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav mitzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. continue on page 144 as we transition to the Shema and her blessings. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala vagala uvizman kariv Ve'imeru amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach Le'alam ulam me'almaya Yitbarach ve'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei de kedusha brichu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Tamiran be'alma Be'imeru amen. Please rise for our call to prayer on page 146. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed Le'olam va'ed Ya la 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 Ya la 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 la. Please be seated. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreyom balayla, golel or mibne choshech, golel or mibne choshech, v'choshech mibne yor. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreyom v'layla, golel or mibne choshech, golel or mibne choshech, v'choshech mibne yor. On page 151, wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll rise together for Shema on page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. We'll continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vihitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hodseti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. On page 157 at the top. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. We'll continue with our prayer for freedom and redemption, Mi Chamocha, on page 158.
Chamocha
continue with Hashkivenu, our prayer to ask for God's sheltering presence on us this evening and every evening. And I might even have the music for it. Nope. All right. Nope, we're going to do it a cappella. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom Behamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom Mehamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom Behamidenu shomreinu lechaim. We'll continue with our tefillah, beginning on page 164 and continue on even-numbered pages, and I'll invite you to please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Hakol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berofeh Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Baal Gevurot Umido melach, melech memit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Please be seated. Yana emsacha kemkomcha ne'ala v'ne'elam. Yana lo emsacha kevodcha malei olam. Yana emsacha bekomcha Darashti tiratcha b'chol libi iraticha uvseiti likratcha lekrati tetzaticha Where might I go to find you, O exalted and hidden one? Yet where would I not go to find you, ever-present, eternal one? My heart cries out to you, please draw near to me. The moment I reach out for you, I find you reaching in for me. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. We'll continue on page 173 at the top. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. And on page 175, you are with us in our prayer, our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yira na'avod. And on page 177, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Continue with our prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, on page 178. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Chasim Leolam. Chasim Leolam. Chasim Leolam. We'll continue with a moment for our own quiet thoughts and prayers. Yehiyu leratzon imrefi behegyon libi lefanecha Adonai turi Adonai Begoali Yehiyu leratzon imrefi behegyon libi lefanecha Adonai turi Adonai turi begoali. We devote the next few moments of our service to holding our loved ones, our friends and family members who are in need of a prayer of healing in our hearts as we're about to say Misha Berach, a prayer for healing. On Zoom, if there are loved ones who'd like to share their name, I'll read aloud in a moment. Please type their names in the chat. And as I look your way in the sanctuary, if you have someone you're thinking of that you'd like to include in our prayer for healing, please feel free to say their name as I look your way. Lauren Trichek, Esther Greenwald, Roz Gibel, Henriette Verrett, Danny Haynes, Linda Ellen, Debbie Lisker, David Scott, Pat Adamson, Michael and Lori Greeno. And for all of our loved ones who are in need of a prayer of healing, we say, Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed is God who brings healing to those who are in need of healing. We'll turn to page 371 as we join together in singing Mishabera. Mishabera Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We have kind of an interesting meeting of ideas this week between the beginning of a new book of the Torah. We start the book of Numbers this week with Parshat Bamidbar, which includes in its beginning the counting of the people of Israel, which comes with all sorts of really interesting and complicated ideas. Jewish tradition, by and large, has found the notion of counting people for the sake of counting people as being not a great idea, to the point where there are biblical passages that talk about curses that befall the people because they've participated in this action of counting. And so we have the idea of a census and all of the problems that go into the idea of census in our tradition, combined with the idea of Shavuot, and I'm going to focus not on the harvest element of the holiday of Shavuot, but in the kind of later traditional element of the idea that Shavuot is the celebration of the revelation of the Torah at Mount Sinai to all of the people of Israel. What is interesting, or one of the things that's interesting about this, is when you put together these ideas of census, of making sure that every person in a particular society is counted, and some of the ideas associated with Revelation, you get some really good kind of pieces for contemplation. And so one of the things that kind of makes the moment of revelation in the Hebrew Bible, the moment where all of the people, we know, at least according to the numbers given to us in the Torah, that there are a little more than 600,000 men present at the counting of, or at the revelation of at Mount Sinai, which commentators estimate, based on the number of men, that there must be at least 1.5 million people present. And when they're going over, when the rabbis kind of are going through what this process would have looked like, this process of revelation, which took a 3-day kind of build-up period where the people are supposed to be purifying themselves and they're supposed to be getting ready, and it's supposed to be this very important moment. And then the rabbis say that every single person experienced that moment at the same time and entirely differently. So what does the rabbis mean by that? Part of what they mean is actually a kind of theological statement. We in the Torah we actually have two, or I should say at least two, copies of the Ten Commandments. And one of the really kind of interesting things that I was listening to in a podcast earlier this week is that the rabbis have no problem holding on to the idea that those two sets of Ten Commandments, the two kind of ideas that we have that, I mean, they're basically the same, but there are enough differences in it to make it noteworthy, that the two sets of Ten Commandments were uttered at exactly the same time, and that's okay because God can do that. We just can't hear that as individuals, but that there would have been certain individuals who heard Revelation one way and certain individuals who heard it another way, and we probably have about 1.499999 million people who heard it in another different way, but those weren't recorded. And the example that they give is actually like one of the things that we sang earlier this evening when we were singing Lecha Dodi, the very first verse of Lecha Dodi, we say Shamor v'Zachor b'dibor echad. So what that actually means, and that is actually a phrase of rabbinic commentary that says Shamor, to keep. So we have the commandment in one of these versions of the Ten Commandments to keep Shabbat, Shamor, and then we have Shamor means to keep, and there's all sorts of rabbinic debate about what that means to keep Shabbat. And then we have this v'Zachor, Zachor et HaShabbat, et Yom HaShabbat, to remember the day of Shabbat. And again, there's all sorts of rabbinic commentary about what remembering Shabbat means and why that's a commandment. But that second part, b'dibor echad, means that they were spoken at once. They were spoken at the same time, and that God has the power to do that. So that's a kind of interesting thing. And if you read my bulletin article, and I don't expect that anybody did, because it came out this morning, but if you read my bulletin article, one of the really interesting pieces about this article is that in this, again, the scope of rabbinic history, there is this idea that when you see a large group of people, you're supposed to say this blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Chacham Harazim. Blessed is God, the wise one to the secrets of the world. And that idea, anyway, actually comes in part from the experience of revelation at Mount Sinai, and so much so that the rabbis say that you're not really supposed to say, well, there is a certain group of rabbis. Some rabbis say it's anything that you would consider to be a multitude of people. And then in the Talmud, it specifically kind of alludes to the idea that a multitude of people refers to 600,000, specifically because of the nature of this moment of revelation in Mount Sinai, that you say this because it's a blessing that's supposed to, on one hand, reflect God's ability to speak simultaneously to every human being present and everybody's ability in that moment to experience God, no matter who they are. And it is supposed to be something that human beings know is impossible, but that we all strive to do. And so when you put that in juxtaposition, this ability of God to reach simultaneously a very large group of people in exactly the way that it was meant to happen at the same time, you have the counterpoint of the census, of this idea where you have leaders in a group of people who are counting individuals. And there are all sorts of flaws with this human system of counting. I mean, not to get political, but when you look at we are in a post-census year, and our society, our country, by and large, did a really terrible job of collecting the information that we needed from the census to make fair distributions of resources and all sorts of other things, including resetting the numbers for the Electoral College, and I mean, you name it, there are any number of things that the census is supposed to control or determine in terms of resource availability. To the point where, I mean, we know, based on scientific reflections of the data, that by and large minorities were undercounted, often at a loss of 5 per 100 people. That's not insignificant. And we also know that non-minority white people were actually counted at plus 1.5 per 100 people. So that is a really it's a terrible thing to have to swallow as a society, to know that we missed people, that we let people slide through the cracks. And that is one of the reasons why the idea of census in Jewish tradition is problematic, because even when you try to count everybody, you often miss people, and even if you don't miss them, you count them physically, you have this potential of dehumanizing them. They become a number as opposed to being a human being with who is created in the image of God and deserving of all of the respect and dignity that a person is should be given. So what makes this particular census in the book of Numbers an acceptable census? It actually comes from an interpretation of the opening lines, the idea that we are supposed to se'u et rosh, that we are supposed to uplift the heads of every person who we're counting. And what the rabbis envision that meant in this particular circumstance was not, as one of my professors in rabbinical school liked to say, that we were actually lifting people up by their heads. He didn't like the word. Yeah, he often, when we would use that, would see that expression like in the Psalm Esa Einai, and then he would see the translation as "lift your eyes to the mountains." He would go like this, so that's not what the rabbis envision in this particular case. The rabbis actually, in a series of midrash, say that what made this special and what made Moses and Aaron special as leaders is that the census actually was an opportunity for every person in Israel to meet with Moses and Aaron. That it was an opportunity for them to be seen as human beings, as separate and apart from the community, and also completely and absolutely necessary for their community to exist in the way that it did. So, and it meant absolutely that no one was left out in the process. So it's my hope on this Shabbat, as we are going into the holiday of Shavuot, that we find a place in our reflection on what revelation means, where we learn to experience that kind of, or at least to think about what it means to experience that kind of capacity to see every person that we come across. One of the most important ideas, I think, in the Talmud is such a simple idea. The idea is that you should never pass a person without saying a word of peace to them. And the traditional greeting for that reason, the reason why we say shalom, comes specifically from that idea in the Talmud, that you should never walk by a person without saying hello. That simple fact would cause them to lift their head and hopefully allow them for even a moment to experience that dignity. And that, the rabbis say, can be a moment of intense revelation. So with that, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue on page 586 with Aleinu, and I'll invite everyone to please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer b'reshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama. Please be seated. We'll continue on page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. We take a moment in our service to hold in our hearts and our memories those who have come before us, calling to mind first Jonathan Hoffman, for whom we are in Shloshim within 30 days of his death. And we also hold in our hearts those for whom the Shabbat and the previous week are a yahrzeit or an anniversary of their passing. J. William Bolton, Lily Rader, Philip Efron, Morris Rosenfeld, Ross Fetter, Anita Abrams Rovner, Jacob Adler, Arnold Ratner, Pearl Lenora Stark, Rosemary Pearson, and Sylvia Polash. And if there are loved ones you're holding in your hearts in loving memory and you'd like to share their name on Zoom, I'll read them if you type their name in the chat. And if there is someone who you're thinking of in the sanctuary as I look your way, please feel free. For all of our loved ones who came before us, we say, Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We'll rise as we turn to page 598 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chai echon v'yom echon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, Ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei dekedusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata b'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens on high bring peace to us here on earth, to all people of Israel and all people of the world. May God send comfort to all those who are mourning. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated. We have a few announcements. The first, with Shavuot beginning tomorrow, we have a special event being hosted and sponsored by Greenville Jewish Federation and PJ Library at Happy Cow Creamery, which is tomorrow, June 4th, and people will start gathering at 1:30 and the program goes to 4:30, but I have the inside scoop, not to say that you should show up late, but the tour of the farm is actually going to begin at 2, so there is some leeway. If you get there at 1:45, you're not going to be left behind. That was planned. So tickets are $5 per person, but there's not a specific ticket that you need. The Greenville Jewish Federation is just collecting $5 donations on their webpage. So if you see QR code, which I think is in the email, or there might be a link, but there's definitely a QR code on the table out there. If you scan the QR code, it takes you to the general donation page for Greenville Jewish Federation. You're not in the wrong place if that happens. You can make a $5 donation and you're good. I learned that also this afternoon. The speaking words tonight is challenging. Next Friday evening, which is June 10th, we will be celebrating our new member Shabbat. The choir will be singing with us, and it will be should be a lovely experience. We have roughly 30 new families who have joined since July of 2019, which is when I believe, well, I don't remember exactly when the last new member Shabbat we did was, but it was sometime in 2019. And so we have a good number of new members, and we look forward to welcoming them formally, even though I know a lot of them have been good participants in our congregation for the last couple of years, including some of them who are on the board. So, but we're going to formally welcome them with this Shabbat service, and I look forward to singing with the choir. And Madison is going to begin her celebration of having her bat mitzvah on the 13th anniversary of when she should have had her bat mitzvah. So, and there will be a special oneg as well. So I look forward to celebrating Shabbat next week with everyone. There also, Kim sent me this email earlier today. There is a program called the Butterfly Project, which has been going on in Greenville for, I think, almost the last full year, where students from around the area, whether it's a part of the Greenville County Public Schools and other various programs around town, have been making butterflies, clay butterflies, as a part of a Holocaust educational program. And these butterflies have all now been glazed and fired in the kiln, and they're ready to be mailed off and to be prepared for an artistic permanent installation, which will be located at the Children's Museum downtown in Greenville. And so we're looking for volunteers. I believe they're looking for 8 volunteers for each day, but the days are June 7th, 8th, and 9th from 9 to noon at the Governor's School for packing these butterflies, for carefully packing these butterflies. So they're looking for adults, teens, or Kim's words are responsible tweens with a parent. So if you are one of those people or know one of those people and would like more information or to figure out how to sign up, I know Kim sent an email out, but if you didn't get the email from Kim, you can email her. Kim Clapperich is our religious school director, and you can find her email on our website. Last, but certainly not least, we are helping out with a blood drive, which is being hosted by Congregation Beth Israel at the synagogue on June 26, 2022, so in a couple weeks, from 9:30 to 1:30. You have to make an appointment at the Blood Connection, and there should be a link again in your e-news. If you use the sponsor code, which you can see here, or again, it also should be in your e-news, the temple will receive a $20 donation for each person who gives blood. Because unfortunately COVID numbers are going back up, donors are not allowed to bring their children to the mobile blood donation center, but please consider donating blood if you are able. I think that is all the announcements I have. So we are going to say Kiddush and bless our children. Would y'all like to come up? I've got plenty of juice. You could have 2 each. Or you can just take one. There's plenty. We'll join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen And we say for you and for all of our kids these words of blessing. Yisimech Elohim kesara Rivka Rachel v'Leah. May you be like the mothers of our people, like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim u'Pri Menashe. May you be blessed like the sons of Joseph, like Ephraim and Manasseh. We wish for all of our children to feel proud of who they are and to always strive to be the best version of themselves with these words of blessing from the Torah. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God's light shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always feel near to you, and may you always be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. We say it together, Amen. And have a beautiful pot here. I'll help me hold it. Amotzi lechem miharetz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Amotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you. We are going to conclude our service singing Oseh Shalom, our prayer for peace. And then I believe we have an oneg next door, do we? I don't know. Maybe not. But we do have challah. So if you'd like some challah, come get that. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom on Zoom. It's good to see you all. I'm going to unmute you in a second. Maybe. Ask all to unmute.
Oh.
All right.
We're in. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to see everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Everyone here says Shabbat Shalom because they're still sitting down.
Guess what? We're sitting down too. Well, I'll see everybody in person next week.
Sounds good.
Have a good week, Pat.
Yes, you too, Joe. I'll catch
Thank
up with
you.
you.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Good to see you, Laura and Reed. Have a great week.
You too.
You too.
You too.
Good night, Kirsty and Joseph. Good night, Anita. Shabbat shalom.